Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wasallam wa baraka ala Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, brothers and sisters. I apologize getting on a little later than we normally would, but better late than never, inshallah ta'ala. Wanted to pick up where we left off yesterday, talking about now what after Ramadan. Talking about some important action items that you and I as Muslims should be keen to pay attention to and to observe after the completion of the month of Ramadan. And yesterday we mentioned two action items. We talked about fasting as one of the action items, and also being keen to secure the reward that we have potentially earned by the works that we did in Ramadan, by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeatedly after the conclusion of Ramadan to accept our good deeds from Ramadan. The third action item that we want to begin with tonight, inshallah ta'ala, is Qiyam al-Layl, the night prayer, and at-Tahajjud, the night vigil. Obviously, brothers and sisters, one of the distinguishing features of Ramadan is the emphasis on the night prayer. As we find the hadith collected by Bukhari Muslim on the authority of Abu Hurairah, in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbi." Whoever offered night prayers each night of Ramadan and did so out of faith and seeking Allah's reward, all of his past and previous sins would be forgiven. Because of this hadith and similar hadith that stress the importance of night prayer as an essential part of the Ramadan experience, most of us make it a point to offer some semblance of the night prayer every night in Ramadan. Now, although our Ramadan has ended, our keenness to offer the night prayer should not wane. Qiyam al-Layl is a virtuous act, not just in Ramadan, but throughout the year. And it should be part of the daily life of the believer. Why? Because one of the most commonly cited descriptions of the believers in the Quran, when you look at the Quran, you're going to find that the believers have many descriptions in the Quran. And one of the most commonly cited descriptions of the believers in the Quran, when Allah says, this is how you recognize the believers, this is how the believers are known, one of the most commonly cited descriptions of the believers in the Quran is their commitment to the night vigil, at-Tahajjud, and Qiyam al-Layl, the night prayer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm going to give you two examples, but there are several. One example is from Surah Al-Furqan, verse number 64, the 25th surah, verse number 64, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. Describing Ibadur Rahman, Allah says, and the true servants of the Most Merciful are those who spend a portion of the night prostrating and standing in prayer to their Lord. We also have in Surah Al-Dhariyat, verses 17 and 18, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَهْجَعُونَ وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. They, the pious servants of Allah, used to sleep but little of the night, offering prayers instead, and in the hours before dawn they would ask for forgiveness. And there are many other examples from the Quran and even more in the Sunnah. So therefore, brothers and sisters, let's make it a point to spend some part of every night in prayer. So even though Ramadan is ended, do not let your connection to the night prayer, your active observance of the night prayer, do not let that end. But rather every night make it a point, unless you have a valid excuse, you're sick, you're ill, whatever. If there's a valid excuse or reason, yes, but if there's no valid excuse, nothing valid preventing you from praying the night or praying at night, make it a point every night to pray the night, or pray some portion of the night in the night prayer. So for example, it could be as little, and it could be a little amount of prayer. It doesn't have to be 3 hours, 4 hours of constant prayer. But a person could pray 5 raka'at, for example, 3 raka'at, or even 1 raka'at of witr, but at least have some connection, some semblance of night prayer every night, because this is the description of the true believer in the Quran, that they pray the night prayer, not just in Ramadan, but even outside of Ramadan. Number 4 from the action items is to be continuously dedicated to reading and studying the Quran. So Ramadan, obviously, brothers and sisters, we know is the month of the Quran. And so rightfully so, we tend to spend a lot more time than usual in Ramadan reading, studying, and pondering the Quran. However, this attentiveness to the Quran should not be confined to Ramadan. Yes, Ramadan is the month of the Quran. We should read more Quran in Ramadan. But month of the Quran does not mean that reading the Quran should be confined to Ramadan. Why is this? For several reasons. One, the Quran is the primary source of guidance in Islam. And how can we hope to be guided if we have no connection with the primary source of guidance, if we're not consulting it daily or regularly? Also, the Quran is the best form of dhikr. Reading the Quran is the best form of dhikr, and Ibn Taymiyyah Haka al-Ijma', he transmitted the agreement of the scholars that the best form of is the Quran. You have people, brothers and sisters, who will travel long distances to meet with a sheikh or an imam or a wali or a somebody that they respect, and they'll try to get that person to write for them some form of dhikr, to write for them some form of dhikr, way of remembering Allah, and they'll cherish it. Write them some formula that they'll recite over and over and over again on how to remember Allah and get close to Allah through these words of remembrance. But what write or a wali write that will be better than the words of Allah Himself? The best way to remember Allah is through His words. And so this is another reason why we should be keen to read the Quran outside of Ramadan. Also, reading the Quran is also a very good gauge for the purity of our hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Uthman ibn Affan, he used to say, لو طهرت قلوبهم ما شبعت من كلام ربكم. If your hearts were truly pure, you would never get your full, you would never get enough, you would never tire of reading the words of your Lord. So one of the gauges, am I really a good believer? Is my heart really pure? The more you read Quran, the more you know your heart is pure, as Uthman ibn Affan, he said. Another sign or symbol or indication that this is very important for us to do outside of Ramadan is that the Quran is one of the most highly rewardable acts that we can do. As we find in the hadith collected by Tirmidhi on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud, and Tirmidhi graded the hadith Hasan Sahih, and Al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, he graded the hadith as Sahih. And that the Prophet said, "Man qara'a harfan min kitabillah falahu hasana, wal hasanatu bi'ashri amthaliha. La aqulu alif lam mim harf, walakin alifun harfun wa lamun harfun wa mimun harf." The Prophet said in this hadith, whoever recited a portion of the book of Allah will receive a good merit, a hasana. And each good merit is multiplied tenfold. Each hasana will be multiplied up to 10 hasanat. And then the Prophet went on to explain, I do not mean to say that alif, lam, mim, harf, or is a portion. I'm not talking, when I say harf, I don't mean a word, because in Arabic, in that time, the word harf could mean a portion, meaning letters connected together to make a word. But he said, but rather, alifun harfun, wa lamun harfun, wa mimun harf. Alif is a portion, and lam is a portion, and mim is a portion, which means, brothers and sisters, every time we read the Quran, for every letter we read, we get 10 hasanat. Allahu Akbar. What more do we want? 10 hasanat for each letter you read. That should make us want to read more and more to fill our scales with hasanat. Also, so when you look at all this, brothers and sisters, it teaches us that we have to be keen. We have to be keen to make time every day to read, ponder, study, reflect upon the book of Allah, the Quran. So brothers and sisters, my advice would be, if you can, try to read every day juz'ain. Try to read every day 2 parts of the Quran, such that by the end of each month you have completed the reading of the Quran twice. Is that too much? Is that too difficult? Then make it juz'un wahid. Read 1 juz of the Quran, such that when you complete the month, you've completed 1 khatmah. Tayyib, some people may say, well, I'm afraid because I've memorized some Quran, and I'm keen to memorize more. If I spend time making these khatamat, these complete readings, then I'll forget the things I've memorized, and I won't have any time to memorize. Okay, then that person could what? Could revise. Make a schedule, 1 schedule to revise what they memorize so they don't forget, they avoid forgetting. And also beside that, they have another schedule where they're memorizing certain portions and certain sections of the Quran each day, a part of the Quran each day. So they target certain chapters and sections, and they set aside a schedule, or they make a schedule to memorize every day so that they memorize those chapters, parts, sections, etc. Another option could be a person says, well, I want to understand the Quran bi-umq, in depth. So they select a credible tafsir, and they spend time every day reading it, taking notes, and reflecting upon what they've read, what they've learned about what Allah means by what He says, and how they can apply that in their life, deriving lessons from that. A person could do that. Whatever approach you decide on, brothers and sisters, the important thing is that we all remain keen in our commitment to reading, studying, and pondering the Quran after Ramadan. And with that, we'll close today's session. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll have more on this important topic tomorrow. Now what after Ramadan? Until then, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless your houses, to bless your spouses, to bless your families, to bless the rest of your evening, to bless your tomorrow, and to bless your Shawwal, to make us from those who fast the 6 days of this month and get the reward for fasting the entire year. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who listen to the talk and follow the best of it, and to make us from those who He teaches beneficial knowledge and who He benefits with that knowledge by making us from those who practice it. Hada wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.